I like the I like the countdown. It's cool.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another HAP special broadcast of The Review. My name is Marco Torres, and I'll be your host for this special reviews broadcast. Today, we're going to be going over the Georgia Senate runoff election. Today, it's going to be a very big newsworthy event, which everyone across the country and world has been watching and keeping track of, because this will determine whether or not Joe Biden has control of the Senate and will be able to allow him to push forward his agenda during the first 2 years that he has in office as the president. So far, though, only one of the senators needs to take the seat on the Republican side in order to win Republican majority. The New York Times has come out recently and has said that this will be a nail biter situation both of the runoff elections going on today, and that the result announcements probably will not happen until tomorrow morning. And again, thank you for joining us for the review. So today I'm here with a special guest named Brad Bailey. Brad is a freelance reporter out in Georgia, and he's actually been there for the last few weeks covering everything that's been going on with this runoff election. So Brad, thank you so much for being here today with me.
Thank you, Marco. It's great to be here. What an exciting day.
Yeah, what an exciting day. I know we've been I remember we had an interview just a couple of months ago when it came to the national election. Here we are now looking at the runoff election, and it's been a really crazy turn of events in the last few months. But a few months have passed indeed. I think one of the biggest things, though, is seeing the amount of turnout and the amount of votes that have been coming in since before the national election to where we're at today. From your experience, can you talk a little bit about what you've seen out there with voter turnout and kind of what Stacey Abrams' group has been doing?
Sure. Well, I've been statewide covering the state for a variety of news outlets, and so I've been here on the ground for the past month, and it's been eye-opening. I'm from the state. I was born and raised in the state, but I've never seen as much of the state as I have now. And I think the state's complexity and who we are as Georgians has been really front and center. I was with the John Ossoff campaign I was lucky enough to be essentially embedded with him for almost 3 days earlier this month. And especially as he went to his southern Georgia tour. He went to Columbus. He went to places like Albany, Thomasville, and Valdosta. And so Albany, a lot of people talk about Atlanta, and of course Atlanta is going to be a lot of the focus tonight, but you cannot win, and this is crucial. This is really, really, really crucial. There has never been a winner, except for Joe Biden's recent win, of Georgia statewide elections without winning the rural vote. That is how Republicans have traditionally won the state for decades, even though there's always been an African-American electorate all throughout Georgia's 159 counties. So one of the interesting aspects with this race is that there's been a lot of focus on mobilizing and getting those voters out in rural areas. And the centerpiece of those rural areas is the town of Albany, Georgia, in Dougherty County, which is 67% African-American. The general election, Albany's turnout was around 70% for Joe Biden. I think the turnout rate was in the 50 percentile, which is a little bit lower than traditionally what it has been. I think for the Senate election, you have people like Black Voters Matter, the New Georgia Project. All those folks have actually come inside Albany, and I've spoken to activists there, I've spoken to organizers there, and they have churned it out. You know, I did an interview with State Representative Winfred Dukes, who said, you know, Georgia showed the world, but we need to show out. Essentially, we need to show out for this upcoming election. And I think they're going to do that. You know, clearly Stacey Abrams has been the lead in that, but there are folks like LaTosha Brown. There's lots of folks around Georgia who have really, you know, taken the lead with this and and done their part to try to really tap into that actually hidden and sort of untouched Georgia electorate that has always been there, but I think that hasn't really come out until this election. So I call it the sleeping giant of Georgia's electorate, and I think it's going to change, as it's been showing. It's going to change national politics for a while.
That's really interesting, Brad. I think one of the other big things that is very similar what a lot of political analysts are expecting to happen, which happened in the national election, is the Red Scare. Because again, if we go back to the national election, throughout the entire night, it seemed like the Republicans were pretty much copying and pasting what they did in the 2016 national election, where they were taking over the majority of the country. But that was also due to a lot of the current on the day votes from the Republicans who didn't vote early. They didn't send in mail-in votes. They didn't do the early voting. They came in on the day. And that seems to be the same exact thing that's going to be happening today. As of right before the polls opened, about 3.1 million early votes have been accounted for, 1 million absentee votes, and 2 million early votes. Were done before today's voting cycle started. So
Yes.
the rest of the votes look like they're going to be heavily Republican, but that again, these are going to be big numbers. So it's going to be a nail biter. The turnout, no one really knows what it's going to be. But I think what you're saying is completely right, that it could go anyway. There is this, what you said, a sleeping giant that is there. Yeah. Brad, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing for the last 3 weeks and some of the other, you said, I remember before off camera, you were telling me that you were with some of the other campaigns, and what was that experience like for you?
Well, again, like I said, I've been working for several different outlets. One of them has been Georgia Public Broadcasting. I just did a recent article about the Black Belt of Georgia and how it could decide the next election. And I've also said that I've been with the Ossoff campaign, and he went to towns like Thomasville, Georgia. He went to towns like Bainbridge, Georgia. He went to towns like Valdosta, Georgia. Those are in red counties, but a lot of people need to understand that they also have significantly large Black populations and significantly large Democratic populations that had previously not have voted as much as they've needed to vote before. I've also spoken to the Republicans. I'm going to be real here. For me to be objective and to get a full sense of the state, the goal is to talk to everyone. So I have spoken to Kelly Loeffler. I interviewed Kelly Loeffler in Peachtree City, Georgia, just this past weekend in Fayette County, which is a suburban county that has gone red, but it also has a large Democratic population. It's one of Atlanta's sort of suburban / exurban counties. Atlanta, Fulton County is going to be heavily blue. The surrounding suburban counties are also going to be blue. Also going to be blue. Not as blue as Fulton County, but they're going to be still pretty blue. The states that the areas that we need to look at Atlanta are going to be those exurban counties, those places like Forsyth County, southern Fayette County, Spalding County. Those counties are red, but they're also changing. And so that's going to be really interesting to look at. I also interviewed Raphael Warnock in Savannah. I asked him about the Black evangelical community and sort of the need to engage them, especially as they've been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. I also went to the Purdue rallies. I went to 2 Purdue rallies. Actually, I went to one in Ocilla, Georgia, which is where David Perdue's mother is from. And I went to another rally with David Perdue, Kimberly Guilfoyle, and Donald Trump Jr. in Bullock County, which is right next to Statesboro, about 50 miles from Savannah. And I talked to, MAGA voters. I talked to Republican voters, and they are turned out. They're turned out and turned up. They're mad, and I because Trump lost, and they're also mad that, they're mad at a lot of the sort of talking points that they're currently being given by Republican candidates and Republican news outlets. And, but the problem is, though, turnout today is down. Republicans depend on same-day turnout to turn this election around. With the fact that almost of those there are 115,000 voters in this Georgia runoff who did not vote in the November election. 40% of those are African American. A significant percentage of those are, of that 115,000 are individuals who just turned 18 years old, who were 17 years old for the November 3rd election. So again, it's going to be anybody's race tonight, I think. You know, and I think anybody out there saying one side's going to win the other, I think they're crazy, because this could be anybody's election right now.
Yeah, it completely can be anyone's election. Really quick, before we move on, I want to turn our attention to all of the viewers out there. Thank you so much for attending this review, a special HAPS broadcast of the Georgia Senate runoff election happening right now throughout the day until 7 p.m. Eastern time when the votes are going to be tallied. We'll also be running another special coverage there where we'll have Alex Mohair, David, and so many other people joining us. I think we have about 6 other people going to be talking to us live about what's going on as the votes are tallied. But right now, who I have is Brad Bailey, who's a freelance journalist in Georgia, on boots on the ground for the last 3 weeks, who's been going through all of the different campaign teams that are, in the runoff today. So looking at, I wanted to say hello to everyone. Thank you so much for attending. I see we have Stephen Harris, we have Nadine Labendens, and we have Fraser Ramsey. Again, my apologies if I just butchered everyone's names. My apologies on that. But we can see your comments live. Please comment. Please let us know what you're thinking. And ask any questions to Brad or myself about the election. Brad has been interviewing all of the people in the runoff. He's been there for the last 3 weeks, and we'd love to answer what you have to say. I also saw in the comment section that we have some people who've already voted in Georgia.
Yay.
What was your experience like? Yeah, congratulations. What was it like? Was there a lot of people? Was it packed, etc.? And specifically, there was one comment I wanted to bring up, and this is something that I also saw earlier too, and it's from a Reddit user. Their username's a number, so it's X3141592. But what they said is that local news says the wait time across the state is about just 5 minutes, except in Cobb and Fulton County, which have longer wait times. Now, what the important thing about that is that's really surprising, because again, a lot of people believe that it was going to be longer wait times because a lot of people thought it was just everyone was going to go out at once, but it's been a very slow turnout. So will this trend continue throughout the rest of the day, or is there going to be a larger turnout as we get to the end of the day, which I believe is what we're expecting to see? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Pop in there. Yeah, I mean, even for election day, clearly you had the long lines for early voting. But even for election day in South Georgia, where I'm from, I went to, I was down there for election day. And those voting times were minutes. People went in and out quickly to that. And I think people were surprised. I think I was on HAPS talking about that. And I think people were surprised by that. I'm like, no, it's been actually like that statewide. And it's been the same case today. I've seen empty tables from the reports I'm getting statewide, where people they're just waiting for voters to come up and vote. So it's been like that in a lot of places.
Yeah, no, thank you. We actually have a question from Fraser Ramsey for you, Brad. What are the chances of there being any voter fraud even so late in the game right now?
That's a good question. I mean, again, I'm definitely not the best person to answer that question. That would be for the authorities. But I think that's a tough question. Like, everywhere I've went, everywhere I've heard about, even in all the sources I'm saying, is that there are like 4 levels of like confirmation when you're going to some of these counties for voting, especially for early voting. In addition to, there are observers everywhere. Every single place is being watched by Democrat, Republican, and Independent. I've spoken to election observers in several rural counties. It's going to be really difficult to pull off voter fraud, I think, in a lot of places, because you have 4 or 5 people almost checking every single vote, and watching everybody that goes in there and watching who goes in there. So I think that's going to be a little tough to do, but of course anything is possible. And I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying that it's under such a spotlight right now that a lot of people are going to be looking for that. So it's going to be really tough to do it.
Right. And then we have one more other comment from Billy Fallow. Billy says, is there a chance for a split result? One Republican, and I'm assuming he means another Democrat.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This race could go any way tonight. It could either be both Democrats or both Republicans, or a split. Because when you look at Kelly Loeffler's at the Senate runoff race between Warnock and Loeffler, I think he was Warnock won that race, but I think he was ahead of her by like 500,000 votes. But the thing is, you have to look at the third person in that race, Doug Collins. And he received over 980,000 votes.
He
Um,
split the
and
Republican
he's
ticket.
exactly split that Republican ticket. So that's a huge thing to consider. And only really about 115,000 people had voted differently in this election than that did not vote in the as a past election. But again, it's about turnout. Republicans depend on same day turnouts. Those vote totals are down today. Again, if you didn't have issues like the $2,000 check that we aren't receiving, that people aren't receiving, that turned a lot of Democrats out in ways that they wouldn't have turned out before. So this is anybody's race.
Yeah, really anybody's race. I also wanted to quickly give a thank you out to Cardinal Malhi. Gave us a 50 cent tip for our stream today. Again, all these little tokens, tips, and stickers all go to helping us. We do this for free, so any little bit does help. So thank you so much for that tip and donation. But moving on, though, no, I would love to talk to you a little bit about. You talked about Kelly Loeffler, and you
Hmm.
talked about her campaign, and one of the other
Hmm.
people in the comment section even said that she was one of the quote unquote the worst senator as of right now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the validity of that, but well, I don't know how we could compare every senator. But what I could say though is that she was someone who was placed into the position to fill up the rest of the term,
Yes.
and now she's trying to go for a full 6-year term as a
Yes.
senator. But going against a Warnock, I think before we even came into today, it looked very unlikely that Warnock was going to win. Looking back at the national election, looking at that time, just because of the Republican split ticket
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
how they would have technically have won if it was all just on Loeffler.
Yes.
But looking at the projections that have been made just in the last couple of days through the New York Times, ABC News, NBC News, it's completely going to be a nail biter. And the amount of people that are now looking more Democrat and more blue in that area of the state has completely flopped. So I was just going to ask, I know you said that it could be any race as of right now, but what do you think is going to happen with the Warnock campaign, and what kind of message are they pushing forward to try and get those swing votes on their side?
Well, I think it's one of those things where Reverend Warnock has emphasized that Kelly Loeffler, or he has said to voters that Kelly Loeffler is an insider, that and she is not looking out for Georgians, that she did not vote for, sort of programs that would have benefited Georgians, social service programs that would have benefited Georgians. She is countering with him, saying that, she's bringing up, I think, a recent abuse allegation. She's bringing up different things that have sort of occurred in the past where that Reverend Warnock has very easily been able to explain away. But again, it's in many ways, it's gotten really personal between the two of them. Yes, they talked about policy, but that race has gotten very, very, very personal, as it has with the Ossoff and Purdue races in a way. So these are very personal races in a lot of ways. And they've touched on policy, but they've also touched on like the background or personal characteristics or things that have been done in the past for each of these candidates. So, I think Warnock is realizing that because of the historic nature of his candidacy, he will be the first Black senator from the state of Georgia ever, if elected. And that is huge in terms of gauging African American turnout. And
Mm.
African American turnout is really the turnout to watch for this election. Otherwise, again, as I mentioned before, the Republicans would have an advantage as they have historically. But because of not just of the work of Stacey Abrams, the work of people like LaTosha Brown, the work of the New Georgia Project, all these things, they have been mobilizing Black voters en masse. And I think because you have a Black candidate, because you have a Black reverend, because you have a Black reverend who has been who sits in Martin Luther King's pulpit, I think that
Mm.
makes a huge difference to a lot of people.
And that's actually what I was going to ask you is how big of a deal is it that Reverend Raphael Warnock is the Reverend of late Martin Luther King Jr.'s church? How big of a deal is that to the community, and what do you think that holds in this election?
Well, Atlanta, and a lot of people don't realize this. Atlanta is really the birthplace of the modern civil rights movement in a lot of ways. Martin Luther King is from here. A lot of the folks that really spearheaded the movement, their headquarters were in Atlanta, and I grew up. I was born in Atlanta. I was born in a time period where black sort of achievement was something that was looked in a very good way. It was something that was exploding. They're exploding in a time like no other time in American history. And in Georgia, it was very unique because when Maynard Jackson, let's go back a little bit with Atlanta politics here. Atlanta is a majority black city now, and Maynard Jackson became the mayor in the early 1970s. There has never been a non-black mayor since, and they've had to work with the Georgia sort of establishment, which has actually technically been all white since. So you've actually had sort of folks in power, sort of this interracial sort of bargaining power that's happened in Georgia for decades, and you don't see that in a lot of places. And so I think Georgia politics is very fascinating. I think people sort of understanding that, and I sort of like the fact that attention is now being brought to it, because the place has always been an incubator for what's happening nationwide. When you look at Atlanta suburbs and the changes that are happening in Atlanta suburbs nationwide, changes in Atlanta suburbs, that's happening nationwide. And I think, so we're just going to see what's going to happen here. And I think, again, Georgia politics will, I hope, continue to be fascinating to people for the time to come.
I think it will be, especially because after what we saw with it finally flipping blue after so many years, this was unprecedented, at least even in Obama's administration, which everyone thought Obama would have been able to do it, but he wasn't able to. So seeing how the Biden administration even was able to outdo the Clinton administration and be able to get this, spectacle done, it's been amazing to see what he's been able to do. And I think Georgia's going to be possibly a flip state for the elections to come. Yes. I think it will be a state to be one of the highlight states to be watching throughout the next few presidential elections. I want to quickly go to the comments again. Thank you to Cameron Sadeghi. Cameron's actually going to be a interviewee later on tonight on our evening broadcast when we're actually counting down the votes and seeing what the announcements are going to be looking like at that point. So check Cameron out later tonight. And Cameron, thanks for joining in early, sending a tip, and being an amazing supporter as you always are. It's always great to see you here in the comments. Same with Mark as well. But we have another comment from, I'm going to just call you X3 from Reddit. X3 says this really interesting question. I want to bring this up to your attention, Brad. So going on your screen now, everyone, it says, isn't she only, and this is towards Kelly Loeffler, isn't Kelly Loeffler only running for the term until 2023? She or Warnock will have to return in 2022. Is this correct?
Oh, that's a really good question, because again, it is a special runoff election. So actually, that's a good question, and I think that is correct. Hold on one second. Yeah, I think that is correct. Actually, like they do have to. Hold on one second. Yeah, thank you for answering that question. You got me on a thing here, but they're going to have to. Yep, they're going to have to do the remainder of this term, and that term ends January 3rd, 2023. So yes, they're going to have to go again in a couple of years. So that's a really good point. So yeah, so again, they're going to be running for re-election in November 2022.
And I think that no matter what happens in 2022, we'll be seeing Georgia's again going to be one of the spotlights, because those seats, no matter whether a Democrat or a Republican wins tonight, the next 2 years, everyone's going to be watching them, and is going to be watching what they do, how they perform, and that's going to follow them until the next election. And that will pretty much determine, in my opinion, thinking whether or not they'll be keeping that seat, or if it's going to flip back, whether it's going to go back to the Republican Party, or if it's going to go to the Democratic Party. So I think the next 2 years will be important.
Yeah, and they're replacing Johnny Isakson, and I've known Johnny, who is the Republican senator. I've known Johnny Isakson for it's just to take me back a little bit, for decades. I remember I was 15 years old, and there was a gubernatorial debate between him and Zell Miller, who passed away. And they came to my small town, and I think I asked them a question or something about transportation. I was 15 years old, so it's the first time I ever did anything on any air. But yeah, he retired, and so clearly these Kelly Loeffler and Reverend Warnock will replace his seat. So, and he's a legend in Georgia politics.
Right. And actually, this brings up a really interesting point. What which is what's going on nationally with President Trump, the Secretary of State in Georgia, and how this is riding on the back of this election. What are the implications of what President Trump did just yesterday with the phone call and all of these different, accusations towards the Democratic Party, the different, scandal ideas, and just kind of the request for these 11,000 votes to, overturn the Georgia election and the Electoral College. What is that? How does that impact this Senate runoff election, or does it at all?
I don't think it's going to make a hill of beans to his core supporters, to be honest. I don't think it's going to cause a dent. I think the only folks it would cause a dent to would be Republican voters. Sorry, Republican suburban voters, and not just in Atlanta. You have suburban voters in Columbus, Georgia. You have suburban voters in Macon. You have suburban voters in Augusta, in Savannah. Those areas, white suburban voters, who will be looking at that, and I think it will make a difference to them. But last night Trump was in Dalton, Georgia, which is about an hour and a half north of Atlanta. It's the county on Whitlock County, which borders the Tennessee border, so it's not too far from Chattanooga. And it's called one of the carpet capitals of the world. They call it. It's in a very red county, reliably red county. The Trump campaign knows the Republicans know their crowd. They know their crowd. They know who they need to target. And to those folks, I don't think any of the recent events are going to make any difference with regard to their vote.
Okay. And then I guess is that the same answer towards how Kelly Loeffler has announced that she will object towards the GOP's Electoral College turnout and to push the Trump administration flip so that he wins the quote unquote election, even though he lost, but to flip their ruling tomorrow?
Well, again, and that's sorry to interrupt, but yeah, that's the thing. I think that to core supporters, they don't care. They don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I think the ones that care again will be suburban voters who are on the fence. Suburban voters who may have voted against Donald Trump for their presidential election, but also voted for David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler or Doug Collins. There are thousands of those voters who voted against Donald Trump, but voted for the Republican two Senate candidates. And to them, their reasons were because they were so anti-Trump, they couldn't force themselves to vote for it. But I think that for those same Republicans, they have to sort of now assess to themselves, because for them, they wanted balance in the Senate. They wanted the Senate to balance out the presidency. But now the question is, how many of them will show up for the polls tonight or have shown up already? And that's a good question. But I think for the core supporters, it won't make any difference.
It won't make any difference.
Nope.
You just said that there were thousands of suburban reporters not reporters, of suburban voters that voted against Donald Trump, but that voted for Perdue, voted for, and that might vote for Loeffler. But in this situation, pushing them away from seeing like what President Trump has done, how Perdue has put himself really close to President Trump, how Loeffler has aided herself in supporting President Trump as well. Do you think these are enough votes to swing it the other direction to a blue side? Or do you think it's just, it could be anyone's call? But I guess the question is, do you think is it enough?
It's going to be anyone's call tonight. It's going to be anyone's. So I'm not going to know anything until I see those, until I see right after 7 o'clock, when I start seeing who is voting and where they're voting. And so, once I see that, then I'll have a little bit more ability to make that call, but not now. It's too early.
Of course. Well, I just want to thank everyone for watching the stream today. Right now, everyone's pretty much in the waiting game. We have to wait until the votes come in, and then we can actually start seeing where this is going to go and how this is going to turn out. We'll be here throughout the rest of the day, being here for breaking news and everything else that happens on HAPS. My name is Marco Torres. I'm the host. And Brad, if you want to say anything, I'd love to hear a closing remark. If you want to say anything, or what everyone here should be watching for in the next few hours before the votes are released. It's all yours.
Sure. No, I want to thank you again, Marco, for having me on today. I'm always impressed with your work and with the intelligence of the folks who were commenting there. But I think that Yeah, I think this is going to be this race today. I believe I saw this coming a long time ago, and so did a lot of other people who watch and know Georgia politics closely. So today is no surprise for a lot of us. And I think again, it's great that now the state, again, like I said before, the dynamics of the state are of national interest, and I think they will continue to be. So yeah, I look forward to going through with you and watching your show and just sort of seeing what's going to happen from here throughout.
Great. Thank you so much, Brad. And again, everyone, we'll be on at 4 p.m. Pacific time. That's 7 p.m. Eastern time when the voting polls close exactly. And we'll be having a lot of special guests on to talk about everything from what the campaign was like, what we've seen throughout the day. We'll have a political analyst. We'll have a volunteer. We'll have Alex Mohair, who's one of the head chief broadcasters here on HAPS, as one of the special guests. And we have college students. We have residents from Georgia. And Brad, if you'd like to join in at that time, we'd love to have you too. It's just we're bringing a lot of people on just to talk
Sure.
about what's happening and pretty much what the results are as they come in. Thank you so much again, everyone, for checking this out. And we'll see you later tonight here on The Review.